Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10 Review. Taylor Sheridan wastes precious time ahead of the series finale. With only so many episodes left before Yellowstone reaches its end, Season 5, Episode 10 does little to advance the show's final story, wasting precious time with flashbacks. At least, the scenes in question appear to be flashbacks. Taylor Sheridan's widely popular neo-Western drama is set to conclude following its 5th season final, unless the reports about Yellowstone Season 6 are true. So it stands to reason that every second counts, but one wouldn't be able to tell while watching The Apocalypse of Change. Of course, the second episode of Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2, isn't all bad. The hour contains a couple of intriguing moments important to the story and character development moving forward, especially concerning Case, and somewhat Beth and Jamie. Ultimately, though, Yellowstone Episode 10 is mostly a snooze fest with only a handful of seemingly significant scenes. When Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10 opens, we're taken back to Rip and the other ranch hands' transport of the cattle and horses to Texas. More specifically, the 4-6's ranch. At first, it's unclear when this scene with Teeter and the rattlesnake occurs. Is it a flashback, or is Rip back on the road for some reason? As time goes on, the confusion disappears slightly, especially when Beth arrives to surprise her husband and doesn't mention John's death or seem all that distraught. However, it takes almost 20 minutes to reach that conclusion, making the episode's first half confusing. It would have been easy for the Yellowstone editors to have had a 1 month ago disclaimer at the episode's beginning or a 1 month later when returning to the present day. Instead, we're left to fend for ourselves. We need to know an episode's timeline early on. Otherwise, we're less focused on the scenes and their meaning and spend more time trying to figure out when they take place in the episode. Not only is the timeline puzzling in Episode 10, but the first half is also unnecessary. The divisive Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2 flashbacks don't advance the show's story at all. Yes, perhaps the rattlesnakes and Beth and Rip's rendezvous in Texas are symbolic of what's happening back in Montana. However, taking that much time to present metaphors and symbols is just a waste of time, especially when only 4 more episodes remain after the Apocalypse of Change. Plus, many will be trying to understand the hour's timeline instead of dissecting the meaning behind the rattlesnakes or Beth and Rip's state. The first half of the Apocalypse of Change might make more sense on a second watch. But for now, the flashbacks are just getting in the way of progressing the impending war between Beth and Jamie. With the end of Yellowstone around the corner, every second is precious. Although the first quarter is frustrating and confusing, the hour's second half contains some important scenes. The Apocalypse of Change wraps up Summer's story, which is necessary, but it's also good that the episode doesn't focus too much on the minor character. The episode also gives Beth confirmation that Jamie and Sarah are behind John's death. Now, the real war between the Dutton siblings can begin. However, the most memorable part of Episode 10 concerns Case. Case has always been the most passive of the Dutton siblings. With his father gone, though, Case is ready to take action and be by Beth's side when she takes on Jamie. The scene between Case and Tate is also significant as Case gives his son a choice regarding his future. Their conversation led me to believe that Tate, and likely Case, won't take charge of the Yellowstone ranch, leaving the responsibility in Beth and Rip's hands. Nevertheless, Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10 can be skipped as its rare important moments can be easily recapped in Episode 11's previously on segment. As Yellowstone barrels toward its highly anticipated series finale, the weight of its narrative should be felt with every moment on screen. Unfortunately, Season 5, Episode 10, titled The War Will Be Over, a title so filled with promise, doesn't quite deliver the suspense and tension we've come to expect from this saga. Instead of propelling the story forward in a meaningful way, the episode falters by wasting precious time and indulging in the kind of prolonged character moments that, while occasionally poignant, feel like filler in the grand scheme of things. With only a handful of episodes left to wrap up this intricate and expansive tale, the clock is ticking. Yet Taylor Sheridan seems intent on dragging his feet. The episode begins with a slow, deliberate pace, opting to focus on the emotional and interpersonal dramas of the characters we've grown to love, and sometimes despise. There's a striking contrast between the series' signature moments of intense action and the drawn-out introspection that permeates this episode. For many viewers, Yellowstone is a show about grand stakes, land, legacy, family. It's a show about the fierce fight for control over the Dutton Ranch, and about the intricate power struggles between the characters. So when Episode 10 focuses almost exclusively on small character moments, it comes across as a frustrating diversion from the bigger narrative. At the center of the episode is John Dutton, Kevin Costner, who spends much of the runtime in reflection rather than action. His internal turmoil, though well acted by Costner, feels misplaced at this juncture. With the future of the Dutton dynasty hanging in the balance, John's deep contemplation of his legacy is expected, but not at the cost of forward-moving plot. His conversations with Rip Kohlhauser and Beth Kelly Rayleigh about what comes next lack the urgency one would expect from a man about to lose everything he's worked for. Instead of getting deeper into the intricate web of betrayal and political maneuvering that has defined Yellowstone in past seasons, we get another soliloquy from John about family values and ranching life, themes that have already been explored ad nauseum. Beth, meanwhile, continues her emotional journey, oscillating between unhinged aggression and rare moments of vulnerability. Kelly Rayleigh does her best to portray Beth's inner conflict, but there's a sense that the writers have abandoned any true evolution for her character. Rather than developing her arc further, we see her revisiting old ground, defending the Dutton legacy, but doing so in an almost mechanical way. The scenes that feature Beth feel repetitive, and while the tension between her and Jamie, Wiz Bentley, is always potent, it doesn't seem to lead anywhere new. Jamie, too, feels trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and calculated scheming. But again, this isn't the episode where any of his big moves land. It feels like Sheridan is setting up his moves without actually advancing them, keeping us on the precipice of something big, but never delivering the payoff. For a show that built its reputation on explosive confrontations, the inaction in this episode is especially noticeable. The story meanders through Jamie's attempts to assert power, but none of them land with the same impact as the earlier seasons, where Jamie's ambitions seemed poised to disrupt the Dutton family dynamic in thrilling ways. Rip and Beth's relationship, once a dynamic force in the show, has slowed to a near standstill. While their love story had moments of tenderness and intensity in the earlier seasons, Season 5 has turned their connection into a narrative afterthought. Rip's role as John's enforcer is cemented, but his personal journey feels largely ignored, leaving his character to remain in a holding pattern. While the Yellowstone universe has always played with the tension between family loyalty and personal freedom, Episode 10 largely squanders this potential. For a series that thrives on political maneuvering and high-stakes drama, Yellowstone's pacing here feels off. One of the most glaring issues with this episode is how much time it devotes to scenes that don't further the plot in any meaningful way. The Duttons are facing monumental challenges, but we're left with characters contemplating their past mistakes, rather than navigating the crisis that's bearing down on them. The stakes, which have always been the lifeblood of Yellowstone, seem muted, and the urgency of the situation is lost. The subplot involving market equities, the rival corporation that has been a looming threat throughout the series, is yet another casualty of the episode's sluggish pacing. Instead of unraveling the intricate corporate machinations that have been such a critical element of the show, Episode 10 barely acknowledges them, opting instead for a few tepid exchanges about land and power.